Carrie, what could the government or anyone else tell you? What could they say to you? Would they tell you that grab your hat, dig a hole, hang on? Would anything they say...
Is that what the underground bases is all about?
Well, I have always had the conviction, and I've put this together over the years, that the so-called elite, the creme de la creme, when they're self-designated, you know, they have been preparing for chaos for years. It initially was initiated by the thermonuclear threat with the Soviets. Underground, fallout shelters where we could go. We had our own air conditioning. We can have our own food supplies and our own water supplies. That was a program that began that I worked very closely with when I was with FEMA over the years. I've been in underground facilities you wouldn't believe. Mm-hmm. And there are facilities everywhere that are not known. I mean, there's a big facility right under Fort Huachuca here in Arizona. I mean, a massive one. Never come out. I'm telling it now, but, there's a deep, massive underground facility under Fort Huachuca. Mm-hmm. They're all over the place. And I went to a Department of Energy school at Camp Mercury in Nevada. That was the first time I visited Site 51. Mm-hmm. I may have shared that with you. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, I went to school in 79. Department of Energy school on radioactive emergency disaster response. Anyhow.
So you went into the underground base at 51?
No, I talked to the guys who built some of them. I also took a bus ride over the pass from Camp Mercury, which is the atomic test facility there. I went into Site 51, Groom Lake, from the rear. And it was no big thing, just a tremendous facility there. Most of it was underground. And the hangars...
So, okay, first they reacted to the Soviet threat and all that, and the nuclear
It'll build
war.
up slowly, and it's already subtly begun. And they don't want to talk about it. No one wants to share it. I mean, look, for God's sake, the lid they've kept on the reality of ET activity on the moon and Mars. Mm-hmm. Oh, with the ridicule factor and the lid coming down, and I think Mendelberg did lose his life because he said too much. He says, it seems to be a rather nice planet, and we know about it, and all we need to do is name it. And then, bless his heart, he had never had a heart problem, but within a year he was dead with a heart attack. When Ike met that crowd at Muroc, which is now Edwards,
right,
in 54, he met the Anunnaki. Mm. Poor Ike, not long after that, had a heart attack. Mm. It was more than he was able to deal with. The shock of that reality took a toll on him. Hmm. And that's one of the reasons why the Brookings report reached the conclusion it did. You can't tell those poor folks out there all this. They couldn't handle it. Well, BS, they can handle it. Damn, human beings can handle anything. I mean,
I have to agree with you.
We've gone through hell over the centuries. If we could handle Attila the Hun and Adolf Hitler, we can handle anything. We've been designed to handle anything. We haven't been designed to live very long. But then again, there's another story there.
Right.
Where did you think that this tremendous outpouring of knowledge on the double helix, our RNA, our DNA, and all of that has been coming forth? Is there some connection with the fact that maybe we now have a relationship with the guys who originally designed us in the first place?
Sure.
Of course we have. We're now in the process of redesigning and engineering our own DNA. And we're being told how, we're being shown how. And thank God they're sharing it with us now, because the first time poor old Adama and Iwa wanted the knowledge, They threw him out of the garden, as it were, you know. And that's another thing I want to talk about briefly in passing, is that there's no such thing as original sin. And that's a crock of manure that's been forced down your throats for thousands of years. There's no such thing as original sin. The human race never fell. It was pushed. And this species that you and I are a part of, this beautiful, wonderful, hopefully incredible race of humans, does have a future. And it is in the stars. And we are going out there to reclaim our rightful place, where we should have been in the first place.
Okay, and this gets into the secret space program and terraforming, because there is some terraforming going on, preparing for what might happen if Nibiru comes through and if the Earth is in such a state. We're talking about terraforming Mars, maybe beyond. Have you heard things about this?
Yes, terraforming is a fine art. It's been going on for millions of years. The Earth itself was terraformed.
Right.
You know, it was prepared. The garden was prepared for life. And then life was introduced and has been nurtured since, from the very beginning. Terraforming is a fine art, and some of those guys out there who've been around a billion years are pretty good at it. So, you see, I don't know whether they're planning to re-terraform us after Nibiru passes, or are they going to try to help alleviate the damage in the meantime? I would suspect that the latter. Maybe they are planning, through their engineering genius, and my God, the fact is that, you know, they've got artificially constructed objects in space in the rings of Saturn that are over 2,000 miles long. Spaceships, 2,000 miles long. I have pictures. I'll share next week.
Okay, what about John Walson? Are you familiar with his pictures of the craft around the sun?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen them.
Just wondering.
We've got objects. I have photographs taken by Apollo 13 of alien ships 5 miles long, and I'm showing those over San Jose.
Wonderful.
Now, those were taken by our own astronauts. Now, you get the guys on Apollo 13, and they're all, from what I understand, all three still alive. And you won't get a one of them to admit who snapped the shutter on that camera, but the film is there, and the negative number is there, the roll number is there, and there it is. NASA photograph of a 5-mile long artificial spaceship. Now, and that's small.
Well, let's talk about the astronauts for a minute, because what's going on with Clark McClelland, and why is he having such a problem coming forward?
I didn't know Clark was having a problem.
He has a book that he's trying to write. He's penniless. He's had a terrible time. They don't want him to talk.
No, they probably don't.
Okay. And have you have you talked to the astronauts? What about Edgar Mitchell? Have you talked to Edgar Mitchell?
I talked, before he died, with Gordon Cooper. I was on the phone a few times with Cooper. He even sent me a photograph of himself. I admired him because he was one of the mavericks who had the courage to come out and say what he had seen. I've known Ed Mitchell for some years. Every time I get a chance to see him, I chat with him, and I consider him a delightful man. He's very warm and terribly bright.
Are they mind controlled?
To some degree.
Have their minds been wiped?
Cooper never was.
Okay.
They never got to Gordon. And I don't think they got to Neil Armstrong either. But all of the rest of them, to some level, have been kind of, well, what's the word I'm looking for here? They have been conditioned not to speak. And in some cases, they may have been hypnotically affected to not remember.